All right. And it looks like we have a good group of people joining. So, Glenn, if you want to go ahead and kick it off, we can get started.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Caitlin. Hello and welcome to the webinar today. I think we'll have some people come in probably a little bit late, but I'll get us started. So my name is Glennon Andrews, and I lead new business sales for PKWARE. So really excited about this opportunity to talk to this group today. Joining me on the call, I have Dmitry Nemirovsky from Atakama. He was one of their founders and also their chief operations officer. So he's going to help in just speaking to why PKWare was selected today. And then I'm also joined by Ben Myers, who leads both our pre-sales and our delivery team for professional services. Ben's going to do the heavy lifting and do the demo of our solution, PK Protect today, our encryption solution. So we're going to get into that. We're really excited about the call. We should be able to answer most all questions for you today, but if you do have those during the presentation, please submit those via the chat, and we'll either make time to stop throughout, or we'll have time for Q&A at the end as well. So to begin today's webinar, I wanted to pass it over to Dmitry just to kind of speak to why PKWare was selected and why we're here.
Thank you, Glenn. And so I'd like to say nice to see everyone, but I don't see everyone, but I'm happy that you were able to make this call. As many of you have already been informed on an individual basis, we have decided for a slew of reasons to sunset our encryption solution. And the most important date to bear in mind is February 26, 2026, which is the date when we will turn off officially the platform. So if there are any questions around that, ping me directly and let me know. But as I've mentioned to everyone individually, to the extent that your software license has expired, it's fine if you continue using the solution through February 2026. Hopefully you're able to identify a solution that replaces us, and hopefully that is PKWare. But just bear those dates in mind because it already is close to Q4, and February will be here before we know it. So please do bear those dates in mind. With that said, throughout the year, as we were informing our customers about our decision to sunset our solution, various of you reached back out to us and asked for alternatives. And early on, we provided several names just to keep things, at arm's length. But over time, we started speaking to the PKWare team. We got into the weeds with respect to their solution. And we decided that in the best interest of our existing customers and moving forward, that PKWare should be a considered solution for moving away from our encryption tool to their encryption tool. And really the purpose of this webinar is to introduce PKWare solution so that you can understand their technology, the way that it functions. And really from our standpoint, it's a solution that should provide the same level of protection that you were afforded with Atakama's encryption. And also, with their team being able to help you transition over from our solution over to their solution. So with that, I'd like to hand it over back to Glennon. And Glennon, do your thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dmitry. You are a webinar expert, and I love the focus on the date. And I think for us, these are two companies that believe in and really appreciate the value of encryption. And I think that's going to be our focus, is just making sure this is as seamless as possible for you all. So quick for the agenda today, we're going to talk about, I want to give background on PKWare and again, how we've determined this from having file level encryption and a really solid replacement that I think is going to be easy for all of you to understand. We're going to talk about some of our overall capabilities because we do offer more than just encryption. That's not a requirement, but it is something that if you don't have or you're interested in, we have a special for that as well. The main focus, though, is going to be on our encryption and looking at that functionality and letting you understand, where there's similarities and where there's differences in this. I'm going to hand it over to Ben for that part for the demo, but then I'm going to take back over. We're actually going to talk through these replacement packages that we've put together. That's going to include pricing. It's going to include timing for what this will be like to make sure that that February date, we're not going to be rushed in January trying to get something implemented. We're going to make sure you have plenty of runway and you're not being charged twice. So I think that's going to be really exciting to go over. We're also going to talk through what our implementations are like. So you have an idea of that timing and we can back into that. Ben will walk through that. And then we'll have time to talk through next steps following the webinar and then have time for Q&A at the end. But do submit questions as they come up while they're fresh. So a little bit about PKWARE. So PKWARE has been in business for 40 years. Whether you are or not familiar, PKWARE is we are the creator of the PKZip file format. So we've been compressing data since the mid 80s for large enterprises, and that naturally evolved into encryption. So protecting data, and then as years went on, we've developed a lot more features around data protection to make sure we can do it everywhere. We do work with 30% of the Fortune 100, but we do that all the way down to small, few user companies as well. But we work with 21 of the top 25 banks in the United States, 60% of the largest card processors and credit card companies, and 60% of the largest insurance companies in North America as well. That being because they have highly regulated and highly sensitive data that we want to make sure is protected everywhere at rest and in motion. So I'm going to go over again kind of our entire platform. So we have the PK Protect umbrella, which really has three parts. There's the users and devices, which is focused on end user data and finding it, in real time where end users are going to be accessing that. So again, we want to control who has the ability to see that through encryption. If it's being emailed out, if it's being shared with third parties, we want to make sure that we understand the data and that we have ways to protect it everywhere that those end users would react and interact with it. And then we do this on big data as well. So on databases and cloud repositories, data lakes, AI, training data, lower environments, test environments. We have ways of obfuscating and masking data in those kind of environments to make sure that it can be used and there's value to it for analytics and for application testing and things like that, but also that it's stored safely and not at risk. And then we do this as well on the mainframe. So we're a big, IBM partner and have been for for decades with both Z, I, and Linux capabilities and functionality there. So the way this would work is, again, encryption's always been a foundation of our solutions and our data protection, but we do also offer data discovery. We offer that classification so you understand what type of data you have and where it lives. We have redaction capabilities. So if you have a social or a account number, a credit card number, and you just want to see the last four, for instance, or remove certain characters out of things, we can do that. And then we do have an integration with Microsoft as well. So if there's data in SharePoint and OneDrive, and you're using maybe Microsoft information protection, their technology as well, we integrate, make that more seamless. But everything else you see is really handled by PKWARE internally from one platform. So what we're going to focus on, and the reason we're here today is though about encryption. So that's where we want to go. Like what you had with Atakama, we want to make sure you have that continuous encryption at rest and in motion that's going to stay with the files. This is certificate free and the key management is seamless and easy with our smart keys. So that MFA that you used to be able to authenticate and access with Atakama, we do this through smart keys, just a different take on that. So not exactly apples to apples, but we do allow the ability to do MFA. But I think as Ben talks about this, you're going to see how it works with smart keys and then know you have that added layer for MFA if needed. All this happens through a centralized platform where you can build policies around encryption. You don't have to, we don't want to impact users at all. We want that to be as easy as possible. That's our main goal, like Atakama's. So we want to make sure you have that. Then there's auditability to this. You have logs, you have ways of seeing where this data is, who's decrypting, are there irregularities in that? We want to make sure you have that ability for dashboarding and reporting for audit purposes. And then We do have contingency keys as well to protect you getting locked out of your own data and ransoming yourself. So that's going to be a lot of what we're going to focus on today on the demonstration. So I think at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Ben to actually get into the product.
Great.
Ready, Ben? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
thanks,
start.
Glennon. Let me go ahead and send that request over. All right, we're going to go ahead and share here. All right, can everyone just, or at least go ahead and can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
All
So,
right, so really what I want to talk about today is maybe not so much the details, but the like for like and similarities between a PKWARE encryption solution and Atakama, right? So Atakama, right? For most of you, you're familiar with the highlighted file I have here, right? In terms of this file has been encrypted by Atakama. If you want to decrypt this, right, you're going to double click and then you got to, go on your phone or a different device and approve that decryption. Okay. So in a similar manner, right, PKWARE's encryption is at that file level, just like Atakama, right? So any encryption that's done with our file or encryption done with PKWARE is maintained with that file, just like Atakama. Now, the difference really between us is our keys, i.e. our smart keys that Glennon talked about, are managed through a central admin console, okay? So we integrate with AD or Entra ID, and you can generate these particular, what we call smart keys, all right? Smart keys are encryption keys wrapped with access control, okay? So if you look at this key, for example, right, any user in the MTA or sales engineer, and typically, customers we work with, you might have an HR group or, a board group. Pretty much any type of user or group within your Entra can be assigned a particular key, okay? Now, what does this really mean in terms of this key? As soon as we assign that user out, we operate on that agent philosophy as well. So I'm highlighting the agent right here. And so that agent here syncs with that admin console, all right? And we automatically authenticate what the user is. So based on, Azure or maybe IWA, we have different ways that our agents silently authenticate. So if I just go to my account, for example, this is the user that is authenticated through that agent, all right? Any key, right, that was assigned to this user is from the admin console here is synced down, which means that I can decrypt or encrypt with that key. All right. So again, a little bit different in terms of where that key management is. All right. Now, just like Atakama in certain aspects, you can also, all of this is automated. Okay. So you do have the option as a user to manually, let's just say, right click a file, right? And you can select encrypt with PK Protect, and that's going to bring up a screen where you can use multiple options. Now, these are all customizable from an admin level. So for example, if you don't want someone using passphrase, great, we can hide that within the UI, all right? But the smart keys that I just talked about are down here. So manually, a user could come in here and say, all right, I'm going to encrypt this file with this high sensitivity or whichever key you want, all right? Now, similar to Atakama, though, we also offer MFA capabilities for this. So you're going to see right now, here's our prompt, all right? So within the admin console, our MFA is a little different in that we work with really any external TOTP authenticator. Okay, so here's our policy, and you can drive this to indicate, hey, when you encrypt or decrypt with this particular key, we're going to require MFA. All right, so MFA isn't a requirement with our system. It's a add-on that you can utilize in certain aspects that work within your flows, right? Now, again, I mentioned the TOTP. Really what that means is it gives you the option to select what authenticator app works for you. So it might be Google, it might be, Microsoft Authenticator, right? You don't need a separate application to do the MFA app processes, okay? Now, in general, once that MFA is put in, you'd be able to use that key. And the same is set up for decryption too. Okay, so this prompt here is going to only allow you to use that key essentially if you enter in that MFA. All right. Now, the other thing in some advanced things that you get with PKWare is you also can set up automated policies. Okay. So what that means is through the admin console, you can say things like, hey, and it on this file share or on this endpoint or on this device, or maybe it's even user specific. Hey, for this user, I want you to apply this policy. And the policy that you are getting kind of for like is what we call persistent data encryption. All right. So that means any file that I would drop in one of those locations here. So let me just copy this and move it over. Is automatically encrypted. So it was really very quick there. And let me just increase the size here. But this file within that second or half a second was automatically picked up by our agent and encrypted now. Okay. What key it used, the access to that key, all of that is directly controlled again through that admin console here. Okay, so through those smart keys that I mentioned. So this gives you a lot of functionality. A lot of customers that we work with in this realm, are doing some automated encryption on file shares, big data, right? Millions of encryptions a day. But it also gives your user some manual options as well, right? So maybe they want to manually encrypt a file for whatever reason, okay? Now, on the decryption side, again, it is seamless. So as long as that user has access to that key that agent's running, I can simply double click that, and it's going to essentially decrypt this and open it in that default application seamlessly, okay? So it's already done the decryption. It validated that I had access to the key that it was encrypted with, and it's essentially opened this document as in Word, right? As a user, I can come in here, make whatever edits, I want in here. How about we put PKWare is awesome, little sales plug, right? And if I save this, it's just going to rewrap that. Okay, so it's very seamless from a user standpoint when you think about interacting with encrypted files. Okay, now a couple of other, I'll say, advantages that we offer. For the like replacement here. So the first thing I'll kind of mention is everything that we just did comes back to this admin console and is auditable. Okay, so this comes back with what we call data security intelligence events. So everything, any agent encryption, any agent decryption. So here's that decryption I just did. Any type of change within your admin console, maybe a new key was generated, maybe it was added, or maybe a group was changed. All of that comes back here as an auditable event. Okay, so now you not only can provide that encryption, but you can really monitor the encryption and decryption activities within your environment. Okay, and if anything maybe looks a little off, right? So why is Glennon maybe decrypting 1,000 files here? That seems odd, right? All of that again comes back into this auditability through these DSI events. Okay, now the last thing I really want to talk through is this idea of contingency that Glennon mentioned before as well. So everything inside of that, the end user agent here from the UI perspective and the actions they can take is all centrally managed. So as an admin, there's a lot of settings in here, so I'm not going to bore you with all of those, but just know this is all about what can an end user do with the application, right? Do we allow them to use other things like, certificate encryption if you use that? Do we want them to use any other, let's say, algorithms inside of here other than maybe AES 256? If they use and we allow them to use password complexity, what is the complexity of the password that we want in there? Okay. The last thing that contingency side, just to kind of explain this as well, is we allow you two types of contingency. So what is contingency for those that maybe don't understand that? It means within our application, any encryption that is done by the end user. So it does not matter, right? If it was the automated encryption that we saw here, if it's a manual encryption, if passphrase is used, any encryption that is done with PK Protect is wrapped with this contingency. So if you think of like a layer of an onion, our key wrapping technology allows this to utilize, and one of those layers is this contingency key or user. And the key can just be a regular X509 key that you essentially upload the public key, you keep the private key. And with that private key, any encryption that's essentially done here, so in this, instance, this test1 key, any user or application that has that private key can decrypt any file within the ecosystem. Okay, so that protects you from maybe a bad internal actor who says, hey, I'm gonna, you know what, I'm leaving in a week, I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna come in here, and I'm gonna, password protect all these sensitive files with a password that I'm gonna not tell anyone about. Well, that's fine. It's not great that they did that, right? But you at least have a way of retrieving that data, okay? The second level that we allow is what we call a contingency user. So just like we integrate and we show it on the smart key side, you can put an actual user in here. And essentially, this user could log in, to an agent on a different maybe user's machine or something along those lines. And as long as they're authenticated, they have the ability to decrypt any of the information within there. Okay. The last thing I wanted to kind of give you just an idea of here as well is everything that you see here within this reporting log as well allows you, we also can send those events to different applications. So one of the big ones that we utilize is we can send these into Power BI, for example, which means that if you want to get, visuals, share this with executives, things like that, we integrate with multiple reporting tools out of the box that allow you to consume this data in more of a dashboard view. Okay. All right, I think that is all that I had today in terms of keeping it high level. There's a lot of detail I can get into, and I'm sure we'll have some follow-up conversations to this webinar, which I'm excited to do that. But Glennon, I will kick it back over to you to continue kind of the discussion.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Ben. That was a great overview. So I am sharing my screen again. Let me move that over. All right. So yeah, Ben took care of that. So the next part I want to talk about, this is usually something I'm not familiar with going through on a webinar, but I want to talk about the package and where we go from here. So what we put together for an offering, I'm going to switch to this screen. We are excited to announce that we're going to match your current subscription fee with Atakama. We do have a minimum of $10,000 for that. We have relationships with a lot of the partners you're already working with. We were really excited to see the list from Dimitri. So that should be a seamless process as well from a subscription standpoint. And that includes our services delivery for standard implementations. So again, we've done this, as Ben mentioned during the demo. We have customers that encrypt 1 million files a day. We have customers with 100,000, hundreds of thousands of users protected. And then others, again, don't get intimidated. There's others with 20 users and things as well. But really excited to be able to offer that package to you from a pricing standpoint. We do have a 3-year agreement that's standard for us, but we've delayed that to start until the expiration of your current Atakama contract. So that's where we've designed this to where, again, we want to make sure that this is seamless for you. So if your renewal, if you don't need to until February, you could start using the product next week. And then we've got time so you don't have to double pay for 2 products. And we think that's really important. I did talk about those other features like discovery, classification, redaction, deletion, and our retention policies that we do as well. There's other things that are available under the PK Protect suite. All of those capabilities are going to be 25% off for you for the first 6 months after moving forward and coming forward with us. So that's what I want to talk about with these packages. I'm going to talk about the follow-up we're going to do. So we'll share all that in detail with you and make sure that it's it's really clear, and we can talk about it on an individual basis. But I'm going to hand it over to you again, Ben, for discussing the implementations.
Yeah, so obviously a big question is, how do we actually get this rolling, right? How, what are we doing to make sure there's not disruption, there's not, data left, unsecure. So we kind of went through at a high level and provided steps here that we've worked with, the Atakama team and PKWARE internally to really find the right flow in terms of making sure there's no real disruptions from you. And so the first couple of steps here, really steps 1 through 3, are really getting the PKWARE infrastructure set up, right? We want to do that to ensure that when we get to step 4, which again, I'll get in more detail here, which is that mass decryption, that we are ready to re-encrypt that data with PKWARE, almost immediately. Okay. So the first thing that we will do once we've kind of got that signed agreement and yes, we're ready to go through, is there's a very simple prerequisite document that you're going to get. This details everything that from a customer side, i.e. your side, you're going to need to be successful with PK Protect. The second step then is really setting up that admin console that we discussed. All right. So looking at your Atakama workflows, setting up the admin console, setting up the encryption policies, creating the right keys, getting MFA policies set up, should you want to go that route. Okay. So that's a bigger step, I'll say, but not huge, right? So we've done this with a lot of customers, and a lot of those things that you are thinking about are automated, or we've had a lot of experience creating these. Then we'll help you roll out that PK Protect software. So that agent that we talked about, right? That needs to be out on any machine, again, that Atakama application is on as well. So that will be rolled out. We want to make sure, that's out there because that is what is going to be used, right, to do that re-encryption, okay? Step 4 is really using that Atakama decryption script that was provided to point at those locations that we've identified in kind of step number 2, right? So this is the mass decryption that just has to happen to ensure that your Atakama protected files are no longer, encrypted with Atakama, okay? And that last step, i.e. in 4 and 5 are really kind of a little bit in tandem, right? Is that mass automated encryption with PK Protect, all right? Really ensuring the replacement of, that Atakama encryption, okay? So very kind of simple high level steps. Again, we've done and rolled out complete encryption policies typically, within a 1 to 2 weeks. And so we are very much committed to helping, all of the customers that are currently using Atakama get over to PK Protect before that February deadline. We've specifically on my team set aside resources. We have enough resources to kind of get customers rolling already. But that is something I want everyone to be kind of conscious of, right? Is Dimitri mentioned it. It's a short kind of time window here. We're already in Q4, so we really want to get engaged with these customers and make sure that we can start doing this already, because we don't need to wait for that February, right? We can do this tomorrow. We can do this, in Q4, and make sure that you're ready to go when that end of life really happens. Okay.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you. A couple of questions came in. I'll put the first one to you, Dimitri, just because then I'll hand it over. I think the others will be for Ben. Where can we find the Atakama mass decryption script? You're muted, Dimitri.
I was just rehearsing what I was about to say. We have a support article. Anyone who needs that information, just ping me directly and I'll send you the link.
And I know Ben has that. He has a link to that as well. So I'm sure if we have follow-up calls, those subsequent calls, we can make sure to provide that as well.
Perfect.
So quickly, a few of these, Ben, that I wanted to make sure you know. How are encrypted files emailed to recipients outside of the company?
Yeah, good question. So we really have 2 options for that, right? So part of this application on those smart keys, there is a specific type of key that's called an external key. We have what's called a free PK Protect reader, which any user can get to on our website. So if you're sharing, let's say, to a vendor, that vendor can download that application. It's a self-containing executable, so it doesn't have to be installed. And essentially, they can decrypt any file as long as either they've validated through an account creation that they have access to that external key, or again, you can use passphrase. Okay, so passphrase also is an option that you can provide users, and then in that free reader, they can essentially just decrypt that as long as they have the passphrase for it. So kind of two options for that external user with encrypted files.
Great. We also had, does the agent work well with an RDP server where multiple users log into the same system at the same time?
Yep. Yeah, no issues there. So again, every agent that is installed out there, right, would be within each of those users' profiles, right? And so all of the information on there is still works through that. So the RDP issue is no issue on our side. I'll expand a little bit on that as well. We also do use a lot of VDIs within our customers. That's another thing that's kind of come up, right? Those virtual desktops. A lot of our customers are spinning up, 40, 50,000 new VDIs a day. We have certain customers. So in terms of scale and our ability to manage some of those unique situations, no issues on our side.
Okay, perfect. The next question I already answered in the chat, but we do have partners represented on the call as well. So that is the MSRP price that we listed a second ago. And then there's partner taken into account on that. So we can talk about that. We're actually going to have a separate webinar for our reseller partners. So I'll make sure that everybody's invited to that as well from a partner standpoint. So next question, where can we, oh, sorry, that was the Atakama script. I already said that for the decryption. For the Atakama features, is there a server required on premise? Ben?
Yeah, so there is no server required on-prem. So the admin console that you showed or that we showed is a SaaS application. So within, again, that offering that we are providing, that we will be hosting that for you. So we have a whole area, and I can put this even in the chat or as a follow-up, Caitlin, but it's just trust.pkware.com. Shows all the information around, our SOC compliance, our, everything related to that SaaS application. But the only on-prem requirement for you is really the agents. So the agents obviously have to be on those devices to do the encryption and decryption, but there is no additional infrastructure required for this.
And we can push out those agents from an install perspective too, and that's really easy for us. Again, we're used to doing this at scale. I'm going to say the next two questions together, Ben, because I think that'll make sense. The first one was, how are agents upgraded? And then the second one says, can the admin console be installed on premise? So I think you might want to speak to both of those.
Yeah, so in terms of the agents, right? So our development cycle is we release quarterly. So every quarter we release new versions that you can take. And that is a simple executable and package. So this can be packaged up really with any type of application management tool, a Jamf and Intune. We've worked with a lot of different items on that. So this is something that you as kind of a customer can control in terms of the upgrades to there. Okay. The other, in terms of, is this SaaS or nothing? We do have on-premise solutions. However, I will just say we have to talk specifically, I think, in those instances for that like for like price, just because there's more of I don't want to say a nuance, but there's more nuances to that on-prem. But we do have an offering there. So we do allow and provide what's called a virtual appliance that can sit within your infrastructure. That is the same admin console as you saw in the demonstration. The only difference is, again, it sits within your network. Yep.
Ben, there was one that said, is it SaaS or nothing? So I think you kind of already touched on that.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be. Again, I know the deal that we're talking about in terms of the like for like does include the SaaS. So we are, pushing customers to go that route, mostly around just time to value for you, right? SaaS is very effective for us. We manage that. We take a lot of the infrastructure off of your teams, and it's a very quick, seamless process, right? I mean, it's typically one session to get that completely set up, and a second session to start encrypting. Not saying the on-prem is difficult by any means, but there's obviously different nuances there in terms of waiting for you as a customer to stand up a lot of that infrastructure, right?
Okay, next question. Was your product ever compromised?
I can say no that we are aware of. I mean, I obviously there's always a small chance that someone has, but no, we've never been compromised. And just to give you some confidence in that, I mean, we work with 20 of the top 25, big financial institutions in the U.S. There's no way we would still be there, and we would be, a you know 10-year vendor of those customers if our encryption was not up to NIST standards and things like that. The other thing I'll add just really quickly there too is quantum is a big thing that our organization is focused on, right? So AES 256 is strong today, but obviously quantum is a big kind of keyword in the industry. So I think it is scheduled for Q1 that we are going to be, as part of that release, everything within the application as well as the file level encryption is or can be quantum safe on your side. Okay, so we are very conscious about security and making sure that our application is not something that's going to be breached.
Perfect. The last one, we only have 5 users for Atakama and not plan to expand. Is PK Protect 10K solution suitable for this situation? I'll take this and just say we're going to have a follow-up. My next slide will talk about next steps. I think we should have a conversation about it. I think, again, we want this to be a nice fit and an easy process. We know you need and value encryption, and we just want to make sure you have continuity of service there and a product that's going to work. So I think we should have a follow-up conversation about that. And just to make sure we know your use case and understand that. I think as of now, that's all the questions that come in. So I'll go. Please feel free to submit more if there are some of those. I want to talk about the next step. So our plan leaving this call is we're going to send a really brief invite tomorrow for like 15 minutes to connect. You'll probably, if you haven't already, you'll hear from Natalie Walters, Mary Clayton, or Stephen from our side. They're going to be the reps in charge of handling this process. They're well aware. Dimitri has given us some information about the accounts, and we're familiar with others. So just really excited to get the chance to have more in-depth conversations, to understand those use cases and make sure we have a plan. So I think that is all I have. I haven't seen any additional questions come in. So I think we've been through the Q&A, and I think that was great. And we really appreciate everybody submitting those questions. And otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to connecting again tomorrow and in the coming weeks to discuss this further. Thanks, Dimitri. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Everyone.
Bye.